Welcome back to another breaking news podcast with me, Kenny Stubblefield, and your guy, Roman Cleary. Roman, we're back again, man. What do you think?
Well, another reaction breaking news podcast, so another commitment. Can't wait to get into it. This time it's Baraka Okojie. It's not a fun name to say.
It is a fun name to say, and you were saying, listen, off the top, like I think this is how you say it. Say his name. That's 100% how you say his name. I'm impressed with you, Roman. I'm impressed with you. How do you think you would have done with?
I can do KO's name. I can do KO's name.
Okay, see, that's what I was going to ask you because it took me. When we were doing podcasts about KO, I got KO's
name in about I think a day or two.
All right, do you remember it now? Can you say it?
KO Dorichi Akubundu Egyogu.
Let's go, man. Yeah, it took me a good 30 minutes of practicing it nonstop in my camera to get KO's name. And honestly, I freaked out because I was interviewing him. I was interviewing him before he came on campus. And I interviewed him, and literally I just kind of I punted at the last minute, just said KO the whole time. So I tried. Like I really did try to get his name right. But anyway, Baraka Okojie is not on the same level as KO in terms of name difficulty, but
and he's a better basketball player.
He's a better basketball player. Why don't you tell us a little bit about, for Tiger fans who are going, okay, who is this Baraka Okojie kid? Why don't you tell us a little bit about him? You've already written a little bit about him in terms of Memphis's recruitment of him. Give us a kind of blow by blow detail of who he is and where he comes from and what's up with him.
Well, he's a 6'3" point guard from actually Ontario, Canada. So yes, he's a Canadian guy that we're talking about here, which isn't that fun. First off, we got Moussa Cisse from Conakry, Guinea coming on. We now have Baraka Okojie from Canada, and if David Jones comes back, you're going to have him from the Dominican Republic. So Memphis this year has the potential to have players from 4 different countries on the team.
I'm a big fan of this. I'm a big fan of this. Yeah, I like this.
That's got to be up there in terms of most in Division I, right? 4 different countries. 4 different countries on one team.
I would suspect that's the case. Yes.
Yes, but in terms of who he is as a player, a guy who I want to say has untapped potential very much. He's a guy who actually reclassified from the class of 2024 to the class of 2023. So he's an extremely young player. Spent his freshman season at George Mason, so he's going to have 3 years of eligibility remaining heading into the season, just like the guy he's going to be presumably at least backing up in PJ Haggerty. It's been a pretty busy weekend for him. He started out in Chicago at DePaul and now has since moved over to Memphis for a visit, and he's probably not going to be getting out of that visit without a commitment. It appears here. 8 points a game, 2.8 rebounds and 2.4 assists a game as well. So he's a guy who's been able to contribute in a lot of different areas, steadily improved as his freshman season at George Mason went on. He actually averaged 34 minutes a game in his final 5 games of the season. Ended his year with a spectacular performance in the A-10 tournament second round against St. Joe's. 22 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists on 60% shooting from the field in 32 minutes. George Mason still fell short in that game, but Baraka Okojie definitely made his presence felt as the season went on. So I think Memphis fans should definitely be encouraged by this pickup because he's a guy that doesn't need to play the biggest role, at least immediately, but he's a young player who's already accomplished a lot in his amateur career, and he's only getting better from here. So you're getting a lot of youth in the backcourt now with both PJ Haggerty and Baraka Okojie, both guys with 3 years of eligibility remaining. Again, you're trying to build a program. You're trying to build a culture. These are the type of guys you need to bring in. So I'd be very encouraged here if I'm a Tiger fan.
You're getting a guy who, while not expected to, as he's taking a step up in competition with coming to the University of Memphis, you're getting a guy who is a true sophomore, as is PJ Haggerty.
PJ Haggerty's a redshirt sophomore. That's PJ.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I forgot. Where was he at before that? He was at TCU, right?
Yeah, started at TCU, then went to Tulsa. But both have 3 years of eligibility remaining.
So you're getting a guy, but the interesting thing about those two guys is you're getting guys who are relatively young in their college career, but guys who have played meaningful minutes in their college career at this point.
Yes.
Baraka Okojie played in all 32 games this year for George Washington.
George Mason.
I'm getting it all messed up. George Mason started 10 of those games. And one of the things that Tiger fans are going to look at his stats and they're going to say, man, he's just not a great shooter. And let me just try to help it understand this. You need to fill roles on this team. You need somebody. You don't need a bunch of shooters who need the ball to be effective on your team. All of those guys all at the same time. You need guys who are able to who come in with a little bit of experience facilitating, playmaking, playing tough-nosed defense, playing at the guard position. And that's what Brandon Okojie brings to you. Like, you look at his
Okojie. Look,
I'm struggling over here today.
Yeah, don't worry. I got you, man. I got you. But regardless, you're exactly right about the role and the ability that Baraka Okojie is bringing to this team. Yeah, he's not the flashiest guy in the world. He's not going to score 20 points a game. He's not going to shoot 40% from three-point range like a guy like Colby Rogers. But he's going to bring toughness. He's going to bring heart. He's going to bring a lot of different skill sets to the table. And that's a guy I think you need at that backup point guard spot, for sure.
Absolutely. Do you think – so obviously he will play the backup point guard spot. One of the things that I noticed about his stats too, just from his 1 year at George Mason, is he has an almost 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio from this past year, which is, if you're a point guard, that's what you want. You want a 2-to-1. Anything above 2-to-1 is just easy money, right? Like, it's like, okay, that's great. But if you had your choice, you'd be like 2-to-1 is where you want it to be. And Baraka Okojie, coming out of his freshman year at George Mason, has as close to as possible you can get to a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. So you're getting a guy who protects the ball, but also is a facilitator at the same time. And that's what you want out of a backup point guard.
Yeah. And he played 24.5 minutes a game.
Yeah.
So the 1.6 turnovers, like that's not a miracle. That's not a mirage. Like, he's played significant collegiate minutes, and yet the turnover rate is still down. It's still where you want it to be. So he's the guy who's going to be able to come in here and reliably protect the ball and run the offense for the spurts that PJ Haggerty is going to do the rest, going to be sit on the bench. Again, Baraka Okojie is more of a long-term thing.
Right.
At the end of the day.
He's a major developmental project, is what he is.
Yes, for sure, because the jump shot, I mean, there's no arguing. It needs major improvement. If Baraka Okojie wants to be a super effective player in the future, the jump shot has to improve. 25% from three-point range is not good enough. No one's arguing that, especially for a point guard. Right. But right now, he's a developmental project, and he can afford to be that because you have PJ Haggerty and Colby Rogers and presumably other veteran guards on the roster that Memphis is going to pick up. So you don't need him to be a big role player right away. You just need him to play the role that he can play right now, which is, 10, 15 minutes a game playing the backup point guard spot. And I think he can definitely excel in that role in 2024-25.
Well, Penny's roster is very quickly coming together. We have had a spate of recruiting commitments, portal commitments that after maybe a couple of weeks of down, but of not hearing anything. But I'm telling you, from behind the scenes, Penny Hardaway is working hard and alongside Coach Rick Stansberry, and their roster is filling out, man. It's looking. Is it as splashy as last year's roster? Absolutely not. But what you're seeing is,
but it's undoubtedly better.
It's undoubtedly. Well, we'll see. I mean,
in terms of the actual process, it's definitely better.
I am withholding judgment because I've learned from last year, right? But I do think I see the vision. I see the vision of what Penny Hardaway is trying to do more clearly than what I saw last year. Last year was a bunch of shiny toys of like, oh my God, like you got that Lou Henson Award winner, you've got Javon Quinterly, you've got all these different guys, Jaquan Walton, who's shooting this amount from the 3-point line. Like, you see all these names and you're like, this is great. Obviously, David Jones was one of those guys too that people liked, but I think David Jones was a pleasant surprise to everybody.
Yeah,
but
David Jones didn't get as much hype as Big Q or Jordan Brown
right.
or even Jaquan Walton at times throughout the offseason. David Jones was actually the kind of the guy in that situation that kind of fell under the radar a little bit. And I think a lot of people forget that. And yet he's the one that actually lived up to expectations and honestly exceeded them. While
do you
the rest
remember
of the guys probably disappointed.
Do you remember when it was that we all kind of started to go, oh, wow, David Jones? The Dominican Republic trip when we saw him play with the national team. And it was like, holy crap, who is this kid? This kid's huge, right? Like he's a beast. Like,
and he was cooking Memphis, actually.
Cooking Memphis.
Yeah. I think he scored 12 points on 4-for-4 shooting in that game.
Yeah, wild.
And that was about the moment where you realize, oh my gosh, if Memphis gets this player, this version of David Jones, lethal. And guess what? They got that player, and yet they still didn't make the tournament. Which oh wow.
I feel you on the roster. I'm not going to say the roster's better just yet because it's not done yet. But I would also say, I think I definitely see what Penny is trying to do here, and I see the roles. I see guys with like clear, defined roles being brought in to fill those roles, and so I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing. I'm withholding judgment right now, but encouraged by what I'm seeing.
Yeah. I mean, when I say better, I mean more so the process and the way that it's happening. That is inarguably
quicker, earlier, roles defined. Yes. Absolutely, yes.
Because you're getting your priorities locked in. You're getting your priority targets locked up. Didn't do that last year. You spent weeks, almost a month, on Jaden Bradley last season, and you failed to bring him in. You're not doing that this time around. You locked in on PJ Haggerty. You centered in on him, and you got him. Same thing with Colby Rogers. Same thing with Dane Danger. And now you're adding to those big-time pieces. You're adding to it with complementary role players that are going to fill a specific need with a specific skill set. And that could prove to be the difference between this year and what they did 2 years ago. Because they got a bunch of role players to surround KD and DeAndre. But what kind of special skill sets did any of those role guys have? Elijah McAdam was just kind of mid at everything. Keontae Kennedy, kind of the same thing. Like, Elijah McAdam wasn't a three-point sniper or a monster defender or a great rebounder or anything like that. Like, Keontae Kennedy, he wasn't that either. You know, other guys, Demaria Franklin, just wasn't really that, you know? So you're getting not only role players to complement your stars, but you're getting role players that have specific skill sets
100%.
That will fill a specific thing.
Totally agree.
I think is, huge.
At this point, what we're describing it as is the 2021-22 season roster with an upgraded role player group of guys.
Well, the 22-23 roster.
That's what I meant. 22-23 season, right? With an upgraded group of
role players.
Players. Yeah.
Now, but at the same token, are your stars as good as Kendrick Davis and DeAndre Williams? We don't know that yet. PJ Haggerty has the potential for sure, but we don't know that yet. Colby Rogers has the potential to be a big time player like that, but we don't know.
And he might not be.
David Jones may or may not be back.
Yeah, and honestly, we don't know who else Penny is targeting. If the names are out there of I think we saw TJ Bamba's name was out there in terms of the final six for Memphis.
Yeah, I mean they're super in on TJ Bamba right now. I mean Aaron Scott is still out there. Memphis is still one of the top names in that battle. So we have an idea of who they're targeting, but who they're actually able to lock up for sure, I mean that still has yet to be seen.
Yep. Well, listen, dude. Like I've always say on these episodes, man, if the news breaks, we're obviously going to be here to react to it. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Obviously, Baraka Okojie has announced his commitment to the University of Memphis to play for the University of Memphis Tigers 24-25 season under Penny Hardaway. It's a good pickup, man. Any final words for you that you want to say?
I wholeheartedly agree. It's another move that isn't necessarily the flashiest thing in the world, but I think it's going to go a long way towards building this roster, establishing the pecking order and the hierarchy that I think Memphis probably desires to be at its most successful point And so, yeah, Baraka Okojie is going to come in here. He's going to fill a role. He's going to play it to the best of his ability, which I think that's all you can really ask for right now after what we saw last season.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. We'll see you back here next time. Any other times that breaking news happens, we'll be back here next time. So we'll see y'all later.